just
Thank you, lady.
continue. Okay.
That's
I also just want to thank each of you for all the incredible work that you have done in your own organizations to keep those organizations alive and afloat during COVID-19, for supporting artists, and for keeping our arts community alive during this really difficult time. I'm also going to do our territorial acknowledgements now. I know they come up on the slides a bit later, Gabe, but I feel better when I do them right at the beginning. All of us are here in Peterborough, and EC3 is headquartered here on land that is part of the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations. Collectively, they're known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, and they include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog, Rama, Beausoleil, and the Georgina Islands First Nations. All of these Indigenous peoples have been caretakers and stewards of the lands and waters locally for millennia. They continue to play that role and to work very hard in that capacity. We want to recognize that and honor that and pledge ourselves to supporting that work and to continuing with integrity and authenticity and rigor on our own journey to truth and reconciliation. And hope that things improve over the next generations and the future to come. What else do I want to say? We're going to do some thank yous to our donors. I'll tell you a little bit more about the history of the program, but this program did reach its goal of $100,000, and that's something important for you to keep in mind as you think about your grant application. There's about $105,000 available. So caution you, don't come in for $75,000. The jury will not know what to do with your application if you do that. It all started with a woman named Deborah Beryl, who was Dean of Education at Trent University for a long time. And she approached EC3 with a donation and with an offer to help start raising money. Have to also take our hat off to the EC3 board, who have really been incredibly supportive, worked incredibly hard, reaching out to different organizations constantly to see what needs were. And helping us develop this program. So this is a new program. It's a new program for EC3. It's a new program, I think, for everybody who's doing work right now. I've probably developed and delivered 30 different arts programs in my career, but never one exactly like this. The other thing I wanted to say right at the beginning is that the focus on this program is got several layers to it. We certainly want to help people stay alive until a full reopening. We know that recovery is at least 2 to 3 years down the road based on all the studies that are being done across the country and internationally by service organizations and government organizations, and that the program is designed to help people with immediate needs, but also to help you with long-term resiliency. So I think a lot of people have learned through the pandemic that they were not ready for something like this. None of us have been ready for something like this, but the information that we're hearing from health officials and authorities is that while this is the worst pandemic we've seen in our lifetime, much worse than the H1N1, worse than SARS, it's not going to be the last one. And more with climate change, and certainly our experience in Peterborough with the flood. I'm trying to think, Sarah, you probably weren't here for the flood, but there was a terrible, terrible flood.
I really wanted to see the flood.
Yeah.
I heard about it when I first came.
Extraordinary. You know, the director of Art Space was nearly killed in the flood. And yeah, no, he was. So it was, we know these things are going to happen, and we're hoping that one of the things this fund and these grants can do is also help us be better prepared in the future. The program's pretty flexible. I'm going to give you some deadlines and dates, but we're going to try and work some flexibility into some of those. And Gabe, maybe we can throw some slides up now. All of the slides that you see will be available on our website. If you have, I'm going to stop periodically and ask you if you have questions. You can also post questions in the chat room if you want, and I'll deal with them at the end. So, okay, I think we can go down one. So this, this project, it is an EC3 initiative. The creation of the fund, the development of the fund to get to our $100,000 goal was an EC3 project, but there was a hitch in the project in that EC3 does not have charitable status. So we knew we would do much better raising money if we could give tax receipts to people. And the best way to do that was to house the donations at the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough. So some of the eligibility criteria and some of the things that people have to do around getting fiscal sponsors, which I'll talk about in a minute, have to do with making sure that we meet the regulations that govern the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough. So there's real legislation that they have to pay attention to maintain their status. It's a legal status with CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, as a thing or an entity called a community foundation. So community foundations can only grant to other registered charities, or they can grant to a registered charity who's acting as a fiscal sponsor for an incorporated not-for-profit. So you could be an incorporated not-for-profit and not be a charity, but if you can get a charity to act as your fiscal sponsor, then you could apply in that capacity and through that funnel, I call it. And although it's sticky and it's gotten complicated because we ended up having to have the application forms on the CFGP portal, we have to respect the fact that those laws are there to, stop charities and not-for-profits being used as fronts for gun running and human trafficking and things like that. It's a bit of a sticky wicket, but we think that we can keep it flexible enough to get organizations in, or we're certainly going to try. So you have to be a registered charity. And Pat, I'm sure Showplace is a registered charity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Creative Spaces?
No, but we've partnered with John Howard, and I'm just trying to figure out how to send an email to Kathy Neal.
Okay, I'll be able to help you that in a minute. That might be a tricky one, but if you've partnered with them before, it might be okay. Are you a not-for-profit?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an easy one. Sarah, how about your organizations?
Well, Borderless, I've been looking at incorporating, so that'll be interesting to look into if I want to apply for that. For Rock Camp, we're either not-for-profit or a charity. I kind of forget.
Okay, probably you're a not-for-profit charity, and that you have to be a not-for-profit to become a charity. So your case may be a little more complicated, but I'm happy to work with you to see if we can find you a fiscal sponsor. I doubt if you can get incorporated in time to meet the deadline. It's possible, but
No.
I don't even know if I can do it that fast. But we have some ideas, and I have to say the Community Foundation has been absolutely fantastic around these things. So just to be clear on language, because they do use very specific language, a donor is someone who's given money, donated money to the fund. A donee is someone who's going to receive money from the fund. And a fiscal sponsor is a charity who's going to host an application and host a grant, if successful, from an incorporated not-for-profit who is not a charity. The idea of the program is that there's quite a long shopping list of things that people can apply for. I don't know if you've had a chance to read all the material or not, but some people have really acute, immediate needs. Those kinds of things are eligible. Things that have to do with reopening are eligible. And also more strategic long-term action to help people prepare for a long-term recovery, or if there was another situation like that, all of those things are eligible. Short-term emergency, prep for recovery and reopening, and long-term resiliency and sustainability. You can apply for between $1,500 and $10,000. $10,000 is the maximum amount of the grant. Okay, Gabe, I think we're ready. So you folks would all qualify in terms of where you are. It's open to local arts organizations, so you have to be in the city of Peterborough or the county of Peterborough, including Hiawatha and Curve Lake First Nations. You all are, and you have to be able to show that you have had a negative financial impact, creative impact, staff, any kind of a negative impact directly related to COVID-19. So if you had to postpone programs, if you had a loss of box office revenue, drop off or attrition of volunteers, inability to undertake your usual fundraising, or you had to change your fundraising and it didn't do as well as it usually does, whether you've had staffing problems, if you need to train people, or you need to get artistic development happening because you didn't have the revenue that you needed during COVID to do that, all of those things are eligible. You can be working in any discipline: music, theater, literary arts, circus arts, dance. What other art forms are there, Gabe?
Media arts.
We're tired. I think this is our third Zoom thing today. You can be working in pretty much any discipline, visual arts, and in any capacity, whether you're creators or exhibitors or presenters. All of those things are eligible. And really, again, the focus is on managing the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and trying to recoup some of the costs that you incurred, the deficits that you incurred to keep the organization afloat during the pandemic, and to provide you with financial support to get ready for reopening, recovery, and long-term resiliency. Thanks, Gabe. So great thanks go out to the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough, because in the end, they not only hosted the grants for us, but they did some fundraising, and we're incredibly indebted to them for doing that. They talked to a number of people who have endowments or funds there and asked if they'd like to contribute, and that helped boost the fund. An organization called the Peterborough Performing Arts Recovery Alliance, which was an ad hoc group that developed to deal with the particular problems and needs and concerns of performing arts organizations during COVID-19, helped as well. And they helped by doing, I think that's Kate Sir, and she's doing a fundraising video there, but they also played a very huge role in our advocacy work with the city. I'm not sure, that may come up on the next slide.
And that's Megan Murphy, just to clarify.
Oh, sorry, thanks, Megan Murphy.
And yeah, so, and that was a great, I was involved in that development. And so it was a great experience and lots of cooperation from all of the, the performing arts groups. Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So they helped with the fund, but I mean, and they helped each other with mutual support, but we also undertook some projects together in terms of an impact study and a reopening guide. So really great work from all of those organizations. Okay, I think slide number 7, Gabe. So the city of Peterborough, we initially approached them for a contribution to the fund as they were not appearing to do anything on their own to support arts organizations during the pandemic. We were turned down initially, but then we went back to them with the added power of, I think maybe at that point we had $60,000 in funds raised, and a lot of support from the Performing Arts Alliance. People wrote letters and came and made delegations to City Council. So they made a $40,000 contribution, and that pushed the fund over the top. So we are very grateful to the City Council for working to find that money. It was actually city councilors who combed line by line through the budget to find that $40,000 for our sector. So say thank you next time you see a city councilor. The whole project kicked off, as I mentioned, due to the efforts of Deborah Beryl and her financial contribution. And then she did a lot of fundraising with individual donors as well, and has just been an incredible champion and mentor and coach and cheerleader for this campaign and for the value and the importance of local arts organizations and local artists in particular. So I'm not going to talk too much about the slides that are in the background section. This is a lot of the language that we developed to explain to potential donors and to city councilors and to city staff about why a fund like that was needed. You may find things in the background that you want to pick up on in your application about why you need this funding, what the impact of the pandemic has been on your organization, why you need to support artists and venues and other kinds of organizations. One of the things I think that we've seen come out of the pandemic, and there have been a few positives. One is I feel like there's a much higher awareness among a number of the folks that we have to work with at City Hall, at City Council, and you know, with the Chamber of Commerce. I think there's been a really big breakthrough in their understanding of the impact of the arts on the economy, on our mental health, on our spiritual lives. And a lot of that is because how much they missed access to the arts as individuals at the beginning of the pandemic, and how grateful they were that so many arts organizations in the city pivoted and found different ways to continue to bring the arts into their lives. So we can just go through that when you can check out this language on the website. There may be things that really speak to you that you want to include. So the next category, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the question of eligibility. So the registered charity piece is really crucial. If you're an incorporated not-for-profit, you need to find a registered charity to see if they'll be your fiscal sponsor. It's not very hard. You get the form from Jennifer Debuse at the Community Foundation. I have it here. I've looked at it. It's pretty simple. Susan, the only concern I might have about the John Howard Society is that typically fiscal sponsors are charities that share your goals and objectives, and vice versa. But if you've done it with them before, it'll probably be okay.
Yes, I believe, well, at one point we were actually operating out of their garage, and we have had connection with some of the people who use John Howard Society services, who attend our workshops and drop-ins.
So there's the connection. That's a really positive, strong connection. So typically, if you don't mind, I'll use you folks as an example. You would contact them. You've got a good history with them. You can get that form from Jennifer. It's pretty straightforward, simple form. They have to sign it. You have to sign it. And you do all the work filling out the application. It's your financial statements that need to be handed in, not theirs. and the check is written to them, and then they disperse the funds to you. That would be how.
In the past, although we've written in, I think it was 15% administration. I'm pretty sure the last time around they waived it, but that was a requirement. Is that something that could be part of the application?
You know what? That's a really good question, and I have to be honest, I don't know the answer to it. I'm going to check with Jennifer on that. It wouldn't bother EC3, but there may be a question with the CFGP. $15 seems a little bit high. 10% would be more normal. I'll be honest, EC3's had fiscal sponsors and hosts a number of times. No one has ever asked us for money. We did have one charity at one point said, if we're going to keep doing this on a regular basis, we're wondering if we could get 5 or 10%, because their staff have to write, you know, the tax receipt and write a little thank you note. And then it can also take them extra time at the year end to account for that money for their bookkeeper and in their auditor. But don't worry, don't panic about it. I'll check it out with Jennifer and see what we can do.
We built it into the budget, but I am pretty sure they waived it.
Oh, okay, even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So one thing that is important is that priority will be given to professional arts organizations that are led by paid qualified professional personnel who pay artist fees and are governed by a board of directors. So if your organization doesn't have that, and I think there are some performing arts organizations who describe themselves as amateur groups or as hobbyist groups, we tend to call them paraprofessional groups. They are eligible, but if push comes to shove, priority for the jury will be professional arts organizations with paid staff who pay artists fees, who are led by a board of directors. And then this one won't surprise you. The organization has to have been in operation since at least May 1st, 2019. They have to have been trying to do whatever they could do during the period between May 1st, 2019 and now. And they have to commit to resuming their regular activities as soon and as close to their normal activities as they can when the COVID-19 public health restrictions are lifted. And this is going to vary tremendously. Like big venues are, even if the regulations change and you can have 25 or 50 people in a room at a time, that may not be doable for a big venue because their costs of opening the venue for an event can be very, very high. And that flexibility is built into the program. Okay, Gabe, number 15. So if it's possible to complete your activities by December 31st, 2021, that would really make things easier because of CFGP's reporting mechanisms, but we do have some flexibility on this and we can work it out on a case-by-case basis. And there's just a one-page report that will be required on documenting the progress of the project, or if the project is complete, what was done, and that's all on their portal as well. Thanks, Gabe. The status of as a qualified donee. What the heck is a qualified donee? Well, that's the charitable organization. And when you go in, when the charitable organization goes into the CFGP portal, you'll see right up front a link that you click onto, and that will allow the CFGP to determine whether it's a charity in good standing. So to maintain your charitable status, you do have to meet certain benchmarks every year, and to be able to receive money, you have to reach those benchmarks and be in good standing. And then again, as we've mentioned before, if you're not a qualified donee, if you're not a charitable organization, you have to work with a sponsoring charity and get a fiscal sponsorship agreement. You can get the form from Jennifer Debuse. If you have any questions about that process, about putting that relationship together, please call me. I'll be happy to talk to you about it and happy to help you with any networking or outreach that you might need to do and give you tips and tricks on how to make the kind of partnership that Creative Spaces has with the John Howard happen. Thanks, Gabe. Okay, so a charity can, and that's a qualified donee, can only submit one grant application for themselves. But say Showplace thought and had a call from an organization that was a not-for-profit organization, but not a charity, and they thought their project was a great idea and they wanted to be a fiscal sponsor, they can come in twice, once for themselves and once for being a fiscal sponsor. And you can also come in more than once if you're part of a partnership. So there's been a lot of discussion about a couple of partnership or collaborations projects. One is a mega marketing campaign about the arts reopening and coming back to the downtown. We're anticipating a partnership project on that. You can be part of that partnership project. It will not impact your own application. And if you are a fiscal sponsor, that won't impact your application or vice versa.
That's good from Showplace perspective. That's good to know. I mean, we certainly would welcome supporting anybody, you know, to help through that. So please pass that on, you know.
Oh, thanks for that, Pat.
Okay, that's great. And I'll actually, oh, sorry, I'm just gonna, somebody's phoning, what you know. The mega marketing, let us know if we can help with that too.
Okay. I think that marketing campaign is going to be essential, and we're trying to get the city to come in on it as part of their recovery plan too.
Sure. Okay. Well, whatever we can do to help, you know, we're here.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, number 18. I'm going to have to go and get my plug. I can't believe I thought I had enough juice to get through this, but apparently not. Okay, eligible expenses. So it's okay. Throughout the pandemic, EC3 has been in touch with dozens of arts organizations, either formally or informally, through roundtables, through surveys, through our boards. Some of you we've talked to because you were applying for other grants, or we just stay in touch in general. So we created this kind of shopping list of eligible expenses that we hoped would cover everything from emergency, acute needs, to what do we need to reopen to get going again, to what kind of things might help us in the long term. So you'll see everything here from buying PPE, developing new artistic programming, getting funding to train volunteers, new marketing campaigns, preparing for the future to do better and be more resilient in the future by advancing your governance or your HR policies. A number of people didn't have good HR policies in place, and then they had to lay people off, and that caused a lot of problems because they weren't ready for it. And it could be long-range financial planning. A lot of people realized they didn't have great budget generating programs or cash flow generating programs. Anything like that is eligible. Deficit reduction funding is also eligible. So you can apply for funding, and maybe we'll go to the next slide, Gabe, if we can. I think there are maybe 3 slides around this. Yeah, and we can go one more. Yeah. You can apply for funding to help alleviate a deficit if it is truly a deficit incurred due to the pandemic. So that's, you know, negative revenue over expenses in financials since the pandemic started in March of last year. We can't help with accumulated deficits or debts, which are the same thing. And you can only apply for up to 50% of your deficit. The jury will take the whole landscape that you're looking at in your organization and the whole landscape of everybody's projects into consideration. A number of organizations asked us to make this possible, and we have. So you could apply for, say, $5,000 towards deficit relief, $2,000 towards PPE, and $1,000 towards training your volunteers and your board if they are going to need special training, if there are still some health regulations in place, but you can reopen. Or if you need to just get your volunteers back on board and get them excited again, and you have a program to do that. You can also apply for funding to develop your digital skills and the skills that you might have to monetize live streaming projects. A lot of people were really resistant to putting things online at first. I think everybody is desperate to return to live performance. I know I am, but somewhere in that mix, you may, as an organization, have decided that you want to maintain and improve some online capacity for live streaming projects or for recording projects and putting them online. You may need help doing that, technical help, production help, artistic help, or you may need help in learning how to monetize that kind of thing so that you're not always just giving that away. Another piece of the puzzle that people have talked to us quite a bit about is artistic development. Because the venues were shut, because there was a real diminution in the revenue, developing artistic content has fallen backwards. People are worried that they may not have content ready to present, even when the health regulations lift, unless they have some additional money. So you can get artistic projects in the pipeline, and there we're going to want to look to see who are the artists and how much are you paying them. And there is a specific question in the application that asks how you're working with local artists. Any questions so far on the eligible expenses? We're good? Okay, thanks, Gabe. We'll move on then. Here are some more. Again, some organizations felt that their boards were not ready when this pandemic hit, and a lot of panicked phone calls in the beginning of the pandemic, particularly when board members were running arts organizations themselves, saying they were going to have to resign. I think EC3 was able to help a few groups around that. But if you wanted to bring in some board management training, some staff management training on how to manage through a crisis, that's eligible. We've talked about a number of these: accounting, legal, HR. All of those things are eligible, as are really concrete things like renovations, plexiglass, cleaning, signage, consultation with health and cleanliness specialists, safety equipment. All of those kinds of things are eligible. Thanks, Gabe. I think I've talked about almost all of these, so we could probably go on. These slides will all be available on our website. One thing I wanted to say is that we wanted to keep the application fairly simple. So it asks you what you want to spend the money on and to estimate the amount of money. If you can give a more detailed estimate because you've been looking for the money and you know, okay, we want to do volunteer training, we want to do 3 sessions, we need a skilled person to do that training, and they're going to charge us $100 an hour, whatever it is. If you can, lay it out why you're asking for $500 for that thing, that will really help. But really, in the end, we just need the fundamental amount that you're going to ask for each area, if you have more than one area. So we don't want you to spend all of the next 3 weeks trying to cost everything out in minute detail. If you have any questions once you look at the application form, please don't hesitate to call me. set aside time over the next 2 weeks to make myself available to help you to make sure that your application is the strongest possible one you could make and put in front of the jury. It is a competition. It's going to be tough for them. Okay, great. Thanks, Gabe. So then again, there are regulations that govern the community foundations, and there are specific things that cannot be funded. And that's the list there. I think that the one that some people might be surprised about is the annual funding drive or events, but we can't provide support for fundraising activities. And if you're a registered charity, you'll know what the Canada Revenue Agency rules and regulations are on that. If you're not sure, let me know, but probably you're not going to be involved in political activities. You leave that up to us. And this is just repeating what I've said before, the last bullet on funding to support deficit reduction. It can't apply to your accumulated debts. It can only apply to current deficits during the pandemic. Thanks, Gabe. Okay, so we can go to the next slide right away. The deadline is Monday, June the 7th at 9 p.m. As we've said, all of the applications have to go through the grant portal on the Community Foundation website. If you have any problems accessing that, let me know. It will be EC3 who will do the follow-up on your application to make sure it's complete and to determine your eligibility. There will be sometimes I've been calling it a jury, but it's a peer assessment committee. So there will be at least 5 people, and we will make it as diverse as we possibly can, as responsive to the people who are applying as we can. You can be assured that it will all be people who are familiar with the Peterborough arts scene and who know what it means to manage these organizations, and who are very clear about what the impact of the pandemic has been on organizations in the arts. The final notification and your check will come from the Community Foundation, not from EC3. Any questions on the application process? People are good. I can only see Pat. I probably have the wrong gallery thing or something here. Side by side gallery. Oh, there you all are.
I'm
There.
still here.
Okay. Susan, the answer to your question is yes. You qualify, you're eligible for the grant based on how you work with professional artists.
Okay, thank you.
Number 28, Gabe. The assessment criteria. All of the assessment criteria have equal weight, and they really flow into each other. So the jury is going to want to be reassured about the role and the impact of your arts organization in the local arts community. While they are sure to know you, they'll be that experienced. Don't assume that you don't need to say why you're important. The stability and sustainability of the arts organization pre-COVID-19. So you'll be asked to address that in the application form. So they will be giving priority to organizations that they feel really confident can take this money and use it to continue to stay alive and to do a good recovery and a good future. And often I get questions about this, about the clarity of the proposed strategic recovery and resiliency plan outlined. So if you're applying for money for certain things, you need to talk to the jury about why you're applying for those particular things. Why those things, why that amount of money, what kind of difference will it make? And this is going to vary widely between organizations, because some organizations, you know, have been eligible for a lot of government funding and they don't actually have deficits right now. Their problems are more with preparing to reopen their spaces and artistic and creative content. Some have big deficits to deal with. Some have HR problems to deal with. So you have to be really clear about, I'm asking for this $10,000. Here's what I'm going to spend it on. Here's what it will achieve. And here's why it's important, not only to us, but the broader arts community. And then number 5 is, do we have reason based on the quality of your application, on the quality of your recovery plan to think that you can deliver the activities or initiatives you're proposing? Thanks, Gabe. Any questions on assessment criteria? Here's your application checklist. You'll have to complete the form on the portal. You'll need to provide as a supplementary document, which you upload, your most recent monthly profit and loss statement. So a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. It's your monthly financial statement. So for most people, that's going to be the end of April. Some people may have their end of May done in time. And then the most recent audited financial year-end statements. And that's for the organization, not necessarily the sponsor. List of the board of directors. Again, if you're just coming in as a sponsor, it's for, like, if it's John Howard, Susan, it's not going to be the John Howard financial statements. It's not going to be the John Howard board. It's going to be your financial statements and your board. If you don't have an audited statement, and we're going to put some quotation marks around audited. What we mean by that is you might have a notice to reader, a compilation review, or a financial engagement review rather than a full audit. If you have less than that, if you have like QuickBooks statements, as long as they're done by an outside party, like a third-party bookkeeper, that would be okay. If you're worried or not sure about that, give me a call. The fiscal sponsorship agreement, again, you get that from Jennifer DeBuse. It's pretty straightforward. It's looking to make sure that the goals and objectives of the organization, there's a mesh, that the organization, the sponsoring organization, understands the risks that it's taking on, that it has a bank account, that it, you know, commits to kind of sending that money along the train to the organization it's sponsoring. If you're coming in as part of a collaborative project, like the big marketing one, I think the simplest way to do that, and we've done it a couple of times, is to create a letter of agreement and just have everybody who's part of the partnership sign it. We need one document, one letter with everybody's signature. So say everybody in the Performing Arts Alliance wants to come in on a big marketing campaign. You just need to say, here's what the campaign is, here's the role of each of the partners, here's how the money's going to be disseminated, and everybody can sign it. You don't need 6 separate letters of agreement if there are 6 partners.
So a question about that, is that still a limit of $10,000 for that particular application if it's a mega one?
Well, yeah, it is. So,
yeah,
you know, the contribution from the fund would be 10,000, but there may be other places to get that money. Okay. And some of the partners might put in money. So if you were partnering with the DBIA, you know, maybe each group puts in $1,000, the DBIA puts in 5, the Peterborough Arts Alive Fund puts in 10, then you start to have something that you can do something with. As I say, we're trying to get the city, to come in on that, but I suspect their contribution on that will be something more like turning over some of the marketing vehicles that they already have to the campaign rather than a cash contribution. But that's not that's not nothing. Like if we could get them to donate, you know how they have all those signs in the hockey arenas that they usually sell to corporate sponsors. If we could get them to be about come back to the arts, come back downtown, that's huge.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
okay, number 30, my computer's going to die any second, so I'm desperate to finish this before it does. Okay, here are your key deadlines. June 7th is your application deadline. Call me anytime between now and June 7th. And we hope to have the results announced by July the 7th. It has to go through 2 boards, but we think we can do it. And of course, a lot depends on how many applications there are, because the more there are, the more time it takes to process them and the more time we have to give the jury to read them all. And again, that completion date for the funded activities, it's flexible, so don't worry about it too much. So we're hoping to have money in everybody's hands by the first week of July at the latest. Thanks, Gabe. This is a wonderful series of tips and tricks for grant applications that Gabe has put together. Works very well for this program and probably any other one. So we'll just go through these quickly. You probably are experienced enough that you know them. Check the deadline, start earlier, start early, start now. Those are the words of Kate Story, who led many of our grant writing workshops. Don't leave it till the last minute. Thanks, Gabe. The images you're seeing in the backgrounds as part of one of our projects we did this year called was Arts Week Shift 1, and this was Postcode Tour. These are all images from an online visual arts exhibition called Postcode Tour. Read all the deadlines, even though it's wordy and boring. It's like when they used to tell you how to write your exam. Read the whole exam first from beginning to end and then start. Thanks, Gabe. Answer the actual questions on the application. We've often noticed that people segue or get distracted, or really stay focused on what the question is asking and be as specific as you possibly can. Thanks, Gabe. And I'll just remind you of this again. Most of you will know this. Write your drafts outside of that portal and the application form. Do it in a Word document, or if your organization works on a Google Drive, do it in there in the editorial program there. You'll probably have to write numerous drafts. You'll want other people to look at what you've written, but do it away from the application form. It's got character limits on it. Like any of these portals, it's a little bit fussy, and you want to not put stuff into it until you think it's perfect. Yeah, the character count is real in their portal. It will just stop you from entering things when you hit the character count. Now, I don't know how you feel. Writing to a character count is harder, but editing it down is easier, because you can think of a word that just takes less characters. But having to cut whole words just kills me, because I'm Italian, I'm loquacious. If they ask for a 4,000 word essay, I write a 6,000 word one. Those are some people in the poetry, takeout poetry cart from Arts Week. Save and print out a copy for yourself. Spoken word poetry. Again, at a project we did during the pandemic called Downtown, curated by Justin Million. Be clear, be concise, avoid jargon and art speak. Don't make yourself sound fancier than you really are. Be really straightforward and authentic in your language. Thanks, Gabe. Again, like, get someone else to look at the application. You can be too close to it. Some of that's for practical things like copy editing, because you're just not seeing that typo. But some of it can just be having that outside head and that outside set of eyes. Take their feedback, take it seriously, and definitely proofread and double check that checklist. Make sure you've got everything included when you sign off at 9 o'clock on June the 7th. So for information on your fiscal sponsor, on anything like that, on any of the eligibility criteria or assessment criteria, contact me. If you're having trouble with the form itself or you need a fiscal sponsor form, contact Jennifer DeBuse at the foundation. I'm going to give you all my phone number. If you have a pencil or you're on your computer, it's 705-749-9101. If you have accessibility needs around accessing the application, if there are computer problems, or if you're a person that needs things read to you rather than read text, let us know. We'll lend you a hand. We're here to help. And slide number 40. Any questions left?
Not for me. Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
That was great. Really
I'm good.
informative. Yep, very good.
Thank
Yep,
you
great.
for
Thank you
coming.
for doing all this. That's great. Thanks, Gabe. Thanks for getting me in to register too. Appreciate it.
No problem.
And thank you.
Big
Yeah,
thanks to
very
Gabe.
helpful, Sue. Great slides, Gabe.
Yeah, he's amazing. Gabe was amazing in the development of the application form too. We just call him Gabe the Amazing.
Gabe, the amazing. Very
All
good.
right, signing off at 7:57. How perfect. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good luck. Don't
Have a good night.
hesitate to call. Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Gabe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.